Sam, you are a demon.
That's not what I meant. I mean, yeah, I'm a demon, but am I really at this point? I work for a human police force. I live in the human world. I barely ever use my power, so it's like...
yeah.
I'm not even a demon anymore.
He's anxious because he's not... Everything's a lot different than what he's used to. He used to be using his powers all the time, so... Sam looked down at his lap and closed his eyes, slumping his shoulders in almost pathetic guilt.
So, I wanted to eventually ask you when the time was right to marry you demon style. Basically, I'd bind my soul to yours, and yours to mine. That way, I'll always know when you're okay. And you'd be able to tell if I
still don't see a huge problem in doing this. But what about preparing the spell? Surely you have to arrange it somehow with spell components and whatever else. I can only imagine what soul binding requires.
That I hadn't gotten around to yet.
he's still in the planning process. Let's give him some time.
Do it, but lately, I found out that it's impossible.
Oh, impossible? I don't know about impossible. It's probably just really, really difficult. I couldn't help but feel my lips droop into a frown. Sam seemed really bummed about not being able to pull off the ritual. It was a big deal, or so Sam emotionally suggested. Sam ruffled his own hair with his fingers, slightly growling under his breath. Despite not looking at me, I could tell that he was angry with the situation.
The one chance I have to feel like how I really am, and I can't even do it.
Oh, we'll do it, Sam. Don't you worry. I'm sorry. I feel terrible for bringing it up. Sam, however, shook his head and looked at me.
Look, don't worry about it and forget you ever heard anything, okay? We'll get married like normal, and we'll spend the rest of our lives together. We don't need a spell for that.
Yeah. I knew Sam was trying to avoid talking about it further, so I nodded and agreed. Okay, Sam. Sam nodded before going back to work, as did I. We had so much to do in a small amount of time. We worked the entire afternoon trying to arrange as much as we could before the passing of time hit us like a wave. Dinner was extremely easy, but our focus was solely on the work at hand. The more work we could accomplish, the less stress we'd have to worry about later. Looking at Sam, I could tell he was exhausted. He had his head in his hands, trying to stay awake as he read over his notes and paperwork, I'm sure for the 5th or 6th time. I was fairly certain he was tired of reading. He always worked so hard and never failed to try and make everything we did the best moment of our lives. He deserved so much, and yet he fell in love with me, a simple human. I had no way to repay him except for loving him back and giving him everything I could. Though, there was one thing. My mind traveled to a small bachelorette gift Suzu and Naomi had sent me. When they first heard the news. Oh, jeez, I was thinking something. I mean, lingerie is one thing. I was thinking something else. It was lingerie to be used during our honeymoon, so it was simply sitting, folded up neatly in a box under the bed. I looked at Sam again, my libido giving me the idea of possibly surprising him and making his night. Oh man, we're getting into the hot and heavy stuff? Another part of my brain told me not to bother with it. That gift was for the honeymoon, so it should be preserved as such. But it was a gift, and it was given to me, so I could essentially do what I want with it. My libido fought with my logic over the subject as I slightly fawned at the idea of making hot love to Sam, or saving the rough night for the honeymoon. The rough night? Damn, why do you gotta say it like that? Like fucking wild animals. Was I going to do it, though? Do we want it? I think, you know what? Let's do it. The more I looked at Sam, the more my inner desire began to burn and light my core on fire. Maybe it was because of his incubus aura, or maybe it was because I loved him that much. It didn't matter. I had to get to the room first and change before Sam came in. If this was going to work, then it needed to be a surprise. I let out a small yawn and stood up, breaking Sam out of his concentration. Do I got a surprise for you, boy? Hey, I'm gonna go get ready for bed. Mind cleaning up everything for me?
Sure.
Thanks. I knew that his exhaustion would hold him back from using his power for a speed boost, so I had a little while to change and surprise him. I smiled and walked over and kissed his cheek before walking out of the dining room. As I reached the lobby, I began to hustle up the stairs and into the bedroom. I needed all the time I could get. I quickly stripped out of my clothes and opened the box Susan and Naomi had sent me, seeing an emerald green and black bra with matching panties. Wow, it looked incredibly sexy, and I couldn't wait to see Sam's face when he saw me in it. As I thought of Sam, I couldn't help but feel a shiver run up my spine. His touches and his love were intoxicating. This was the least I could do for him. His scent was intoxicating, and his eyes were endless traps for me to get lost in. His arms were my castle, and his heart was my timekeeper. He alone made my world perfect, and I could no longer imagine my life without him. I heard Sam's heavy, tired steps as they hit the stairs, forcing me to rush while I hid the box, hid my clothes, and grabbed my black robe to cover myself. As he opened the door, I turned to face the window. We're about to get it on.
Hey, you ready for?
Not sleep. Oh, here's that music. We know what that means. Sam stopped. I was certain that me facing away from him in my black robe surprised him into silence, so I looked over my shoulder at him. I needed to seduce him, like he seduced me, so I needed to release my inner temptress. We're gonna release our inner temptress. I slowly turned around, carefully formulating what I wanted to do for him, and looking deep into his eyes despite the distance between us. Sit down. Damn. I'm just like, sit down. We're about to, there's no escaping this. Mesmerized, Sam slowly made his way towards the bed, not breaking the gaze between us, and sat down in silence. Was he going to be obedient? I moved to the fireplace, knowing that it only took a couple of clicks to turn on music through my TV. As if Lady Luck was on my side, the tune that began to play from it was slow, sensual score. I looked at Sam as I slowly let the robe slip down and off my body, revealing what was underneath it. Sam's eyes instantly dilated at the sight, and his chest heaved in both surprise and desire. That's right, Sam, I got this sexy shit on. I channeled every ounce of sexuality I had in my body as I slid the robe away from me with my foot and rammed my hands up my sides. Sam, you've done so much for me.
Yeah?
I want to show you how much I care for you, and I want to thank you. Sam stared as I began to sway my hips to the beat of the song, floating through the air. Sam's eyes traveled up and down my body as I ran my hands through my hair before bringing them down my shoulders and over my breasts. How was I able to do this with such a straight face? I don't know, I can't. I would never be able to figure it out, but I went with it, walking to Sam and leaning forward a bit to hover my lips over his. As Sam leaned in to kiss me, I pulled back a bit and held a finger over his lips. Not all fingers. That's not as sexy. You can't touch me until I say so. That includes kissing me. I could tell that every nerve in Sam's body and mind was firing just from looking into his lust-filled eyes. He was drowning in need, wanting to ravish me simply from what I had already done. How much farther could I push him? I wanted to find out. Sam obeyed, keeping his hands by his sides on the bed and biting his lower lip to maintain some control of himself. It was actually rather refreshing to see him like this. I wouldn't make him wait long, however. I leaned back towards him, hovering my lips over his as he stared deep into my eyes. He wanted to kiss me, however, he remained still for me. Perfect. My hands began to reach for him and slowly began to remove the Letterman jacket and undershirt from his body. His glistening skin and the minimal light in the room had me licking my lips at the sight. He really was handsome. I hope this isn't going to be like the same thing from when we were with Matthew with all the lip licking, like need some chapstick. That wasn't that sexy for me. Even more than that, he was all mine. Only I was allowed to do this to him, to touch him, to kiss him, to make love to him. I was forever happy and grateful and wanted to show him just how much he meant to me. I stepped back, my eyes tracing his form before running my hands over my body, over the lingerie that I'm pretty sure he wanted to tear off of me, and slowly dancing to the music. Is this the music that we're listening to right now? I would assume it is. The sway of my hips and the way my fingers traced over my skin made him release some form of growl or desire-filled sigh. The show was for him, and soon he'd be able to ravish all he wanted, as soon as I brought him to the brink of his control. As much as I wanted to be dominant here, it was amazingly sexy to see him lose control and let me feel his rough and strong passion. I would drive him to that point with each hip sway and each trail my fingers created over my body. Knowing that I needed to prod him a bit further, I slowly walked over to him, standing directly in front of him. However, as I turned my back to him, I could feel his growl against my back, making me repress a shiver. The beast was slowly coming out. Damn, this is getting intense, y'all. I swayed my hips even more, bending slightly to have my rear dance over his lap without actually sitting down on it. I had never really imagined I would give someone, let alone him, a lap dance. His heavy breath against my back let me know that it was working to help build his desire. I smirked before rolling my hips in a circle, purposely making my ass ever so slightly brush over his groin. I was rewarded with a growl, which made my smirk widen. I can't speak, this is just too hot and heavy for me. Almost there. I continued to roll my hips in circles, straddling his lap while my back hovered barely an inch from Sam's chest. I slowly felt myself become hot at the dance, needing him to touch me and ravish me already. However, the goal was to make him break, not for me to command him to. I quickly turned around, straddling his lap and pressing my knees down into the mattress as I met Sam's gaze. His eyes were shifting back and forth between gold and green, just a little more. I placed my hands on Sam's shoulders before rolling my hips forward, letting it rub and grind against the heated bulge in his pants. I can't not laugh at this stuff. I ran my nails over the back of his neck and pressed my chest to his, hovering my lips over his mouth once again. Sam, do you want me? Sam couldn't even speak a word. He was very quietly growling through his teeth, irritated that he couldn't touch me upon my demand. However, his eyes spoke volumes of his lust for me. The final breaking point. I finally pushed forward and took his lips in mine, kissing him deeply. My core was on fire and I needed him to break. I bit his lower lip, knowing that while it would show my power over him, it would very quickly be overturned. As Sam's hand gripped my ass, I gasped in surprise, melting at the sensation of him grabbing a cheek in each hand. Jesus Christ. Oh man, now it's getting to that point. Come on, Ashley, you can do this. You chose this. I let out a hot moan against his lips as Sam pushed back against my mouth with his own kneaded lips. He pulled my waist tightly against him, grinding his hips into mine and letting me know how very hot he was as he came to learn just how hot I was for him. I let out another moan against his lips before I felt Sam pull my legs to wrap around his waist. My arms circled Sam's neck as he stood up, lifting me with him, and I continued to make love to his mouth with mine. That's a weird way to put it. Make love to his mouth with mine. Okay. He kept his hands on my rear, massaging each cheek roughly as he turned around and climbed over onto the bed on his knees. Sam fell forward, pressing me down on the bed as he ground his hips in between my legs against my already burning desire. As I moved my arms, he quickly moved his hands from my buttocks and grabbed my wrists, pinning them to the bed beside my head. I don't know why I said buttocks, I just felt like switching it up a bit. Sam pulled away and looked down at me, eyes gold with need in preparation for an enthrallment spell. His enthrallment over me was part of our sex, no matter how gentle or rough it was. It made each touch, each movement, and each dance 10 times more explosive and pleasurable. I felt warmth take over my body as Sam finally began to enthrall me, making me moan at how the heat made my core and desire scream to be relieved.
Don't.
Okay. I nodded, mewling in desire, but agreeing to his demand. Are we a cat now? Well, the tables had turned, and I was ready to receive him. However, he wanted to have me. Sam, with almost insane speed, removed his pants and underwear, leaving him bare over me.
I'm not gonna hold back tonight.
Damn, okay. Wow. I hoped you wouldn't. Sam smirked before gripping my wrists, making me gasp again at the sensation.
Maybe I really am a brute.
I'm not minding this. I purred at the sight of his gaze. We really are a cat, apparently. He seemed to be full of carnal passion, without restraint or desire to hold back. It was so alluring and delicious to see the lust in his eyes. Delicious. Sam finally leaned down and claimed my lips, making hot love with them with his own as I moaned. His grip on my wrist tightened as he pressed his chest against mine. I could feel his heart pounding against my chest in rhythm with my own quickened pulse. His hands slowly released my wrists, knowing that I wouldn't keep them there, before trailing down my arms and tracing over every curve of my body. He purred in delight with the shivers that ran through me at his touch. It wasn't long before he had removed, almost ripped apart, my lingerie and pressed his nude body to mine. Hey, that was probably expensive, though. The warmth of our bodies made the air that much more heated, but also that much more sexual. Love burned our eyes as we gazed at each other, and I was left moaning and reeling at Sam touching and caressing every part of my body. This is... okay. I became his to ravish, and he was mine to love and feel ecstasy with. As we finally made love, time became forgotten. Our sex was rough, hot, and crazed, wild like two beasts, craving each other's touches and sounds. The bed creaked loudly with our lovemaking, and the sound was only accompanied by the sensual music that played on repeat, the slaps skin between us, and the moans that fell from our lips. We quickly became louder than the music, but we barely noticed. All we cared about was how we made each other feel as we reached for each other's release. His emerald eyes bored into mine as we became lost in the pleasures between us, which was heated, crazed, wild, rough, and full of love. I could only stare back, needing to see him as I felt him. As he professed his love for me, I felt myself reel and rush faster towards the last string holding me together. As it broke, I gripped Sam and gave every ounce of love I had through a love profession of my own, mixed with a hot and loud scream. We both drifted through a white... A white, blissful glow of ecstasy and release, grasping each other and not wanting to let go. His arms enveloped me and held me to his body as I circled my arms around his neck and nuzzled into his shoulder. We were both very exhausted and very much full of love.
I love you. I love you so much, you doofus.
I love you too, Sam. Okay, well that was pretty good. That was good. I mean, he was a little tense. He needed some good loving. I mean, you know, it was a tense day. I practically purred as Sam ran his hand over my hair and back, soothing me into a peaceful sleep. The warmth of his skin and the hum of relief that washed over my body helped me drift to some slumber at last. I felt myself drift through the darkness of slumber, both at peace and enjoying the warmth around me that it brought. I was tranquil, unable to feel anything but bliss. I loved that I often had the chance to experience this kind of sleep, which was good since I was stressed about the upcoming wedding. I needed proper rest. However, as I floated through the dark, I could faintly hear the sounds of fire swelling around me. I looked around through the dark, unable to see anything but blackness. What the? Oh, we're going through some nightmares again, just like with Matthew. Slowly, the noise began to grow louder and louder, unrelenting in its crescendo. I almost had to cover my ears from the sheer volume.
You think you can stop me, boy?
Here's the demon lord again. Oh! As I blinked, the dark around me shifted into a burning room. Flames touched every inch I could see, and in the midst of it all were Sam and his father, the demon lord. They were both wounded, but both were standing tall, confident as ever. Sam stood between me and the demon lord, protecting me from him. Still, I felt fear seep into my soul as I looked at the evil demon lord smirking at both me and Sam.
I will kill you, old man!
Oh, Sam's mad. Sam's already a badass. You don't want to get him mad, too.
I want to see you try. You don't even have the strength to save your precious human.
Oh, shit. What? The fuck was that? Before I could figure out what he meant, I felt an immense pain in my chest as something ripped through my back and stabbed through me. Sam turned towards me, horrified at what he saw, and I looked down to see a blade sticking out of my sternum. I'm fucking dead. I couldn't even emit a whimper of pain as endless agony surged through my body, wrecking my nerves and distorting my vision. I could barely make out Sam arcing back to scream at the sky, large flame-like wings erupting from his back. Oh, that actually sounded a little scary. However, I felt my body give into the pain and my vision turned black. Okay, that makes me a little nervous. I felt waves of agony crash into my body over and over as I remained on the edge of death. When I was finally able to open my eyes, I could barely make out Sam kneeling over me, resting my head on his knees as tears ran down his face.
No. This can't be happening. No.
Oh no. You don't often get to hear Sam like that. It's kind of makes me sad. From the look on his face, I really was dying. How could this be? Why was this happening? His hands quaked in disbelief as he ran one along my cheek and used the other to hold my shoulders. I stared up at him, gasping for air as blood seeped over my skin. I was dying. I felt it. I knew it. Sam wept, but continued to stare down at me, trying to keep me awake and alive with his touch. However, I felt that I wasn't going to last much longer. I winced at the pain and reached an arm up to Sam, touching his cheek. Sam. Sam shook his head violently, not wanting me to use energy to speak. I grimaced at the pain, but Sam continued to cry. My heart whimpered at the sight of his tears falling down his cheeks.
Please, no. I love you. Please stay with me. No.
Well, so we just had some hot love making, and now they're gonna just totally destroy our hearts with this and make us all sad. Great. Sam, I love you. I wanted to wake up, but I didn't have the strength to fight this illusion. I became lost in the pain that was pinning my body down and draining me of life.
I can't lose you!
I don't want to die, man.
Please.
Oh, no, this is gonna make me cry. I don't like hearing him sound like that. My chest wouldn't allow me to breathe in anymore. All I could do was exhale my last breath and close my eyes. Oh, Jesus Christ, man. Oh, okay, I'm awake. Woo! You can't hit me with that heavy emotional stuff right after all that hot stuff. It's too quick of a change. At a scream, I finally awoke, sitting up in bed and finally being able to fully breathe again. I panted, feeling the need for fresh air to circulate through my lungs and chest. I ran my hand over my chest, feeling no marks and knowing that I was indeed alive and awake. But what of Sam? I looked at the side to see him still sound asleep, lost in his dreams, which seemed to be peaceful just from the look on his face. I let out a quiet sigh, closing my eyes and looking to the ceiling. It was just a dream, nothing more. It was merely a nightmare. I experienced them all the time. The more I thought of it, the more I could sense the fantasy of it. I was okay. We were okay. I ran a hand through my hair before lying back down, knowing that I would find solace in Sam's arms. As if by instinct, Sam wrapped both of his strong arms around my form and I cuddled against his chest. We were fine. We were going to be fine. At last, the wedding day arrived. We had prepared all that we could, and everything was in order. Sam, wanting to follow human tradition and not to see the bride before the wedding, headed to the venue to change into his tux. I, however, was alone. I didn't ask Naomi or Susie to help me, and I honestly didn't want them to. I needed to be alone before my wedding, so I got dressed and made myself into the perfect bride all on my own in my own mansion. I stared at myself, seeing exactly what I wanted to see in the reflection. I looked exactly how I wanted to look on my wedding day. I smiled, unable to shake the feeling of happiness from my body. I'm getting married. I let out a small sigh as relief washed over my nervous mind. Everything was going to be fine. As I heard a car honking outside, I felt nervousness creep in once again. I shook my head. I needed to relax. I grabbed the things I needed and rushed out, entering a white limousine. It was set to bring me to the venue, but I stopped the driver before he began to drive off. Can we stop somewhere first? The driver agreed, and I guided him towards the cemetery my grandfather was buried at. This is where we get abducted or some stupid shit, like with Matthews. I don't know. It had been 2 years since he passed away. My personal visits to his grave had become fewer as time went on, but I had never stopped going. Today, though, was an incredibly happy day. I was so full of emotion I couldn't help but visit his gravestone. After all, I was about to marry a demon. I was about to marry the man of my dreams, and I wanted to stop there before going to the wedding venue to talk to my grandfather. I'm pretty sure I looked odd in that cemetery wearing a wedding dress. However, I really didn't mind. I needed to come regardless. I stood by the grave, staring down at it with a smile. I'm getting married today, Grandpa. The wind gently danced around me as if my grandfather ushered it to reply. My smile grew brighter, and I let out a sigh. I couldn't lie. I wanted my grandfather to be at my wedding, but I couldn't go back in time. Even if I was able to, how could I have stopped him from dying? Why do I feel like that's a foreshadowing? I feel like that's a foreshadowing. I shook my head. I didn't want to think of that, not on the day of my wedding. I hope you'll be there in spirit, Grandpa. I'm sure you'll... Rain? Before I could continue my sentence, the sky suddenly became dark, causing me to look up. Rain began to fall and patter against the stone and grass as a haunting bell began to chime. What boggled my mind was the fact that the rain was avoiding my body. It was like I was in a safe circle, underneath an invisible umbrella, so that the rain couldn't soak me or my dress. What the... Was this grandfather's doing? Why was it raining all of a sudden? The rain became heavy, and I didn't dare move from my spot, afraid of what would happen. I looked at his grave, confused and concerned. My eyes locked into engraved stone. This wasn't a natural storm. Magic was at work here. My heart gave a quick sneeze in reply to my conclusion, but the word magic reverberated in my mind. You know what? Pause. Maybe I just forgot, but I used magic in Matthew's route before, and I don't think we ever touched as to why I was able to use magic. Why that happened in his route. I wonder if we'll ever find out why or how I did that. Maybe in one of these other routes? I don't know. Magic. I looked down and lifted my hands to scan over my gloved palms. My fingers began to tingle, almost as if that single word had unlocked something. Magic. I gently pinched the edge of the glove on my hand with 2 fingers and slid it off, revealing my bare skin. Nothing had changed, but I could feel that something was different. I could faintly feel energy zipping through the nerves under my skin, dancing in excitement at the word magic. I wonder... I knew Diana had taken away my energy and my magic before she left, but what if... Oh wait. Was that something I already knew of in the last game and I've just forgotten because it's been so long? Probably. What if I still had some left? I raised my hand to the sky and focused on the back of my hand. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had to see something. My mind quickly formed a word in my mind. Okay. I didn't know where it came from, but I let it fly from my lips as a soft whisper. Destino. Okay. As soon as the sound of that word rose into the air, the rain around me suddenly froze, as if time had stopped. The wind was still slightly blowing, but the rain had stopped. See, I knew it. I knew it. We're over here controlling time and shit. We're gonna go back, save Greenpea. I slowly lowered my hand and looked around. Did I really do this? Before I could move again, the raindrops and the stormy clouds above began to fade away, returning to the sunny weather it had before. I looked around and noticed that the grass and the gravestone were all dry, as if the rain hadn't even fallen in the first place. That was...
I knew it! I knew it!
There we
That
go.
girl has demon magic.
There we go. What the...
Then quit talking and let's take her!
There we go. To the demon world.
The demon lord will be so pleased.
That bastard. Who... Before I could turn to search for the voices, I felt hands grab a hold of my feet, and I looked down and lifted my dress. 2 pairs of evil-looking hands had taken a hold of my ankles, reaching through a dark red and purple pentagram. I shrieked, trying to pull my legs away, but couldn't stop them as they swiftly pulled me into the ground. I was pulled deeper into the darkness. I was no longer in my room. I was being dragged through a dark void, one that I couldn't escape. I reached out and clawed at the dark, trying to find something to grab onto. I tried to pull my legs away from the hands that were holding them, but couldn't pull free. What was going on? Why was this happening? Someone help me! As if someone had heard my screams, I suddenly felt the hands let go and disappear, leaving me to float in the darkness they left me in. I shut my eyes. Please let this be a dream. Please let this be a dream. I finally felt a surface under my feet and I collapsed onto it, my body curling in on itself from the experience I had. I didn't dare tear my eyes away from my lap, not ready to get up just yet. The voice I heard, however, made my heart stop.
You.
Diana!
What are you doing here?
Just paying a visit. I looked up, finally having the courage to take in my surroundings. My heart stopped beating for a moment, seizing in my chest. Hey! I looked up to see 5 figures, strangers, monsters, beings that I didn't recognize. No, I definitely recognize them. They all looked down at me in surprise, as if I had dropped in at a very bad time. One man looked like an orc from a fantasy game without the tusks. He had broken horns and a very frightening aura around him as they stared at me. The other male was lanky in comparison, more human-like, but I could almost feel power emanating from him regardless. Is it just me, or does the art look a little different from before? Or maybe it's just me, I don't know. One of the women who was staring at me had rabbit ears. They twitched on top of her head as she looked at me and gripped her staff. She seemed harmless, yet she had animal ears. The one creature that I couldn't discern the sex of seemed more excited to see me than surprised. What freaked me out about them was that they had wings sticking out from their back and they were floating. The last woman, however, set off alarm bells in my head as I looked at her surprised face. Her hair, her eyes. Diana? Hey girl, it's nice to see you again. Yeah, we're back here. As she stared, the woman turned her body towards me in recognition to the name I called her. It was her.
What are you doing here?
I used some magic. I guess you didn't take it all, and here I am. Diana walked towards me and stared down at me. It was odd. She didn't look like a human, yet I wasn't afraid of her demon form as it towered over me. I was more in shock as to what was going on. I would assume you wouldn't be because you've seen her in her demon form, and you've seen demons before. I would think you'd be a little bit used to it by now. Before Diana could speak further, most likely to repeat herself, a figure quickly stepped up and bowed to her, kneeling beside me.
My lady, please forgive me. I felt something moving between our worlds and assumed the demon lord was to blame, so I intercepted
And this
his
is all
summoning of
happening
his
again.
human.
You. So I wasn't the only one who felt the change in the air.
No. Diana stared at the man kneeling beside me as I kept my eyes up at her, and she turned her gaze back to me. I gulped slightly. What was she going to do with me? This all felt wrong. I was about to be married. I was about to live my happily ever after with the man I loved, and I was in a place I didn't know with Diana and a bunch of other creatures I didn't recognize. My instinct was to stay still. I think that's the same thing I picked last time, which was stay still. I couldn't move. My mind was empty of emotions except for fear. Why was this happening? Where was I? Why was Diana here? Actually, maybe I should pick something else just to be a little different. Let's go back. Let's scream really loud. Wait. Oh, I can't. Either way, I'm gonna stay still, I guess. Diana stared down at me before sighing and kneeling down to my level. As she settled onto her knees, I leaned away from her, unsure of what she'd do. Was she going to kiss me again and take my energy? Knowing her, maybe.
Can you tell me what happened?
Kind of. I didn't want to speak. I felt no courage to. My mind was so wrapped around this chaos that I felt nothing but fear and anxiousness. This couldn't have been happening. I was dreaming.
Is she okay?
I'm definitely not okay, Pixie.
I don't think so.
This is a waste of our time. Just kill her or something.
And then there's the...
Yes, because that's a smart thing to do. Kill someone who is clearly traumatized and has done nothing to deserve death. Brilliant idea.
I can
Bravo.
sense the closeness in this family. Diana continued to stare at me, waiting for me to answer. Why? She didn't cast a spell on me, nor did she attack me. She continued to wait and stare. Slowly, my mind began to sink into the situation. Diana was willing to listen. Was she willing to help? That was another question, but first I had to answer her. My voice didn't want to answer still, so I forced myself to nod, wanting to answer her somehow. Diana smiled softly, which conflicted with my memories of her. She never smiled like that, yet she was now. Diana held out her hand, ushering me to take it.
Can you stand?
I believe so. I think my heels, I think I might have broke a heel on the way down, but I'll be fine. I nodded again and took her hand, standing up at last. I looked around at the other beings in the room. They all kept their gaze to me, unsure of what I would do or say. Diana, however, led the conversation.
First, can you tell me what happened to you?
I fell through a fucking hole. It was insane. I was scared. Nearly broke my damn ankle, and I'm here.